cumbia los jornaleros. Mueve la cintura, también los pies. Mueve la cintura, también los pies. Mueve la cintura, también los pies. Mueve la cintura, también los pies.
So thank you so much for joining us tonight. This is a community-led forum that multiple organizations in the city of Pasadena. We've been doing these types of forums since 2017 to really advocate and also allow the community to get to know who they will be voting for, who they should vote for, and you'll hear directly from the candidates yourself. Also wanted to be known that every single candidate in each race, Senate and Assembly, was invited tonight. Now, whether they decided to show up or not, that's based upon their own judgment, and we respect that. But we did want the community to know that everybody was invited. And so, yeah, here we are today. We're going to start with introductions. And so each candidate has, did you want to, okay. Okay, each candidate has 1 minute to introduce themselves. And then we're going to start with Senate first with Sasha. And then we're going to move our way all the way down the line. And just for clarification purposes, organizations that are listed on our flyer will have the opportunity to ask questions, and then we might have some time at the end for community questions as well. All right? There you
go. Well, my name is Michelle Martinez, and I'd like to say thank you for your time and consideration in coming out tonight. I think it's one of the greatest opportunities we have is to have fair elections and to know who our candidates are. And unfortunately, in recent years, we've seen less and less folks come out to vote. And I think that we comprise our communities and have a very important role in selecting who our leadership is. I'm a first-generation American, a Peruvian. My parents both came when they were 19 from Peru, went to PCC, as did I. And I actually was part of the student council here in, not going to say what year. Let's just say it was decades and decades and decades ago. But I love Pasadena. I was born and raised here, and I had the opportunity to speak to some folks before the event got started. And it was because what we're seeing in our city and across the state, I really want to be able to help.
Thank you. All right, we're going to start this off with questions. We have organizations who, as I said, sponsored this event tonight. And each organization will have the opportunity to ask a question. Each candidate will get a minute, about a minute to 2 minutes. Okay, great. 2 minutes to answer each question. I know it's hard. It's hard to just put everything that you've done and all your policies in 2 minutes. But we're going to try our best, all right? The first question is coming from Complete Streets.
My name is Liz Schiller. I'm with the Pasadena Complete Streets Coalition. We work for safer streets for all users of a street. And my question for the candidates is, we've seen some conflicts recently about building more highways. The stated goal of the state is to reduce total vehicle miles traveled because transportation is one of our main contributors to climate change. What will you do to rein in Caltrans? Because they really just seem to want to build more freeways.
All right. So tonight I'm going to ask you guys to put on your thinking caps when it comes to being critical thinkers, which I know all of you in the room are. But it isn't just about bureaucracy and how we can fix things. It really is asking ourselves, what is the catalyst? So I remember when the Gold Line came in, I was so excited about the Gold Line because at the time, living in Altadena, it's literally 16 miles door to door to get to my job in downtown LA. And it could take me anywhere from a half hour on a good lucky day if I was on an off hour to 2 hours during traffic. And so when the Gold Line came in, I was really excited about it. And I said, I was the first one there to buy my ticket. I was going to use the Gold Line. And it took me over an hour to get to work. So it didn't help. It didn't work. And although it was a good thought and a good idea, at the end of the day, it didn't help me. And so as leaders, I think we set a tone. We are responsible for ensuring that the programs that we create and the solutions that we provide are actually working for our constituents. And so that's what I want you guys to think of. My dad was an omnibus driver. First, he worked in aeronautics, but then he decided to work for Omni Transportation. And it was incredible. I told my dad all the time, how did you get away with that? Because he would see somebody running for the bus and he would actually stop for them. Or he would find somebody who didn't have the necessary, money, and he would just put it in there and say, no problem, come in today. And this is the kind of leadership, I think, that is missing today, that compassion to really understand how can we be of service and not just throw a program and more bureaucracy at it, but how do we really make a difference? I'm so thankful for the Gold Line, but also I wish it really worked.
At this time, we're going to bring up Patrice from Alpha Kappa Alpha's sorority. She's going to introduce her sorority, and then she has the next question.
Good evening. Patrice Marshall McKenzie, member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, a Lambda Omega chapter here in Pasadena. We have been serving here since 1960, and Alpha Kappa Alpha is the oldest sorority for Black women established in this country. We are 116 years old as of this year. The question that we are going to ask is related to education. Public education is the cornerstone of our democracy. As an institution, it is one of the greatest pathways for providing Californians with community and economic stability and mobility. What will you do to protect the minimum investments for Proposition 98 allocations in our budget? How will you also identify ways to grow the Proposition 98 floor so that our schools continue to have the funds needed to educate California's future workforce and the future leaders?
Okay, well, I'm going to talk about the elephant in the room, and that's not because I'm a Republican. So California, I was just reading the report. $103.3 billion are being spent in education. $103.3 billion from K to universities. And what are we seeing in our education system? That nothing is changing. When I was councilwoman for the city of Pasadena, I had the opportunity to tour our schools in the district. And I didn't want to say anything to the teacher who toured me, but I left with a grieving heart, and I'll tell you why. Because the teacher that was taking me through was showing me the classes for English as a second language. I was raised in my home speaking Spanish, and frankly, I didn't speak English until I had to go to school. Same thing with my sister. And I was old enough to take my sister when she had to go to school and get her assessed. And she spoke zero English. It was always Spanish in the house. The kindergarten teacher told me she would have to be put in English and as a second language. And I was only 21 at the time. And I remember fighting for her, and I said, absolutely not. She's going to be put in a regular classroom, and in 3 months you can evaluate her, and if it's detrimental to her, then we'll reevaluate. Within 2 weeks, all she was doing was speaking English. And this is what we're doing to our kids. We're literally taking them from kindergarten, graduating them, and they're still in English as a second language. And we're doing them a disservice. Instead of looking in the rearview mirror, we should be looking forward and asking ourselves, how do we prepare them for life? And I want them to have every opportunity possible. I'm a first-generation American. My parents came from Peru when they were 19 years old. They didn't know how to help me, but they knew that the library was there, and they would take me to the library and make me advocate for myself and say, go ask them, get help. And that's the kind of spirit I want to ingrow in our children, that they have everything they need within them to get to wherever they want to go. And I truly believe that. Thank you.
All right, next question. Next question is from UP. It's a UP organization, and they are all about education. And their question is, A California appeals court ruled that San Francisco could continue allowing non-citizen parents to vote in school board elections. However, that law will be interpreted the same across the state. Would you be in favor of a state law clarifying that all local jurisdictions in California has the same right as San Francisco to extend voting rights to qualified non-citizens?
Wow. So this is a really tough subject for me to broach, and so I'm going to do it as carefully as possible because the first commandment from God is to love. And I agree with both of them. Parents have a right. They're probably the only ones that have the right to raise up their children in the way they should go. And unfortunately, in California, we've stripped those rights from our parents. So it's a real fallacy for us to be standing here and saying, we really want them to vote. We want them to have a voice for our children, when the policies in California are stripping parents from the parental rights. And so we can't speak of one thing without speaking of the other. America stood for something. It's why millions of people came here legally to America. And in my own family, I have had to live it because I have family members that came here out of desperation from Peru. And they didn't come here legally, they came here illegally. And I'll tell you what they found. They found a very hard way of life because they didn't have the proper documentations. And so what they ended up doing was going back to to Peru. And they waited 16 years to come to America, the right and legal way. And I'm very proud to say that my cousin came with my aunt, and he is an amazing individual. At a very young age, got married, bought a home. He works for FedEx. And bought his first home, bought a second home. He's got a beautiful family, and I love to see that. But what that meant is he had to go back and do things the right way. And so for those individuals that are here, we really have to be asking ourselves, what does America look like? And how do we instill the proper legislation so that we can continue to do what's right by America?
All right, next up we have a question from Francisco. He's going to come ask his question, and he's also going to introduce his organization.
All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Francesco Cañas. I'm here on behalf of the National Day Labor Organizing Network, Pasadena Job Center, as well as our digital media project, which I am a part of, Radio Jornalera. So we provided the sound system and equipment for today, and we're doing the live stream as well. And of course, it will be recorded, so if you want to listen back to what our candidates have shared today after the fact, you're welcome to do so. So I have a question for all of you. Thank you. So during the lockdown, we saw how workers were provided a safety net through funds so that they could survive, except for excluded undocumented workers who contribute billions in taxes and shape the California economy. Will you support undocumented workers by supporting SB 227 to provide unemployment benefits to undocumented workers? Thank you.
We'll start with Michelle.
Thank you for that question. My answer to that is no. And I do believe that everyone deserves a hand up. So let me begin with that. But it doesn't start from the government and bureaucracy. And the reason for that is because we just perpetuate the problem. And what we're looking for are real solutions. And beginning of the evening, I asked you guys to put on your critical thinking caps, right? And what this requires is that we not just think of the immediate problem ahead of us, but how do we ensure that these individuals that need help are truly being helped? And what that means is, I'm sorry, did you have something for me? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. So anyways, what we need to do is ensure that when we are really offering assistance, that it's going to help the individual and not perpetuate the problem. And I know that's tough, because that means some people are hurting. And our hearts give out, right? That's the first thing. I've lived it in my bone and flesh. I've had family that's been homeless that I've had to help. I don't say these things half-heartedly. I say them because I've experienced them in my bone. And I want my family, and I want your family, and I want our community to be able to stand. But we're not going to do it when we keep offering subpar programs. And that's what it is. My family did not come to America for substandard programs. My family came here for the American dream. My parents got it, I got it, and I want everyone in our community to be able to have it. I say this because first and foremost, I'm a Christian, and I am commanded to love. I might not like what you think, but I am commanded to love and see how we can help you. So thank you.
All right, at this time, we're going to call back Patrice for the next question.
California's Correction and Police Officers Association, CCPOA, is a powerful voice in public safety policy. How will you implement public safety policy that is best for the people of California and not what CCPOA drives as their agenda?
Thank you for that. I have a hard time with these questions, not because I can't or don't want to answer them, but I think that we need a lot of time to do that, and we can't do that in 2 minutes, unfortunately. But what I would ask you to do is to, again, ask yourselves, how did we get here? Because there are catalysts that we're not addressing. And when we take a step back and look at the big picture, we understand that it's not just one organization that is perpetuating the problem. It's an entire scope of policies. I'm going to bring it up because it has to be said at some point, and I'm going to say it now. In 1972, Democrats took over the Senate, and they had a majority. And they've had it since. In 1996, Democrats took majority in the Assembly. So that means since 1996, our state legislators have had the opportunity to implement and fix all the problems we're seeing today. And yet we're still enduring these issues. And so when we look at how do we fix it, I don't think it's a left or right answer. I think it's a people question. How do we do what's right for the people? How do we do what's right for everyone in our citizenry? I truly want to fix things. And I know it's hard to hear, from the left or from the right, and we have opposing issues, but we have to get back to working together. We have to get back to saying, what do we do to help our citizenry? Because we've had the opportunity to fix crime. We've had the opportunity to fix homelessness. We've had the opportunity to fix immigration, and we're no closer to it. So I would ask you all to make that consideration as we look at the policies that we're trying to enact and the leadership that we're selecting.
At this time, we have Colin.
Okay, so again, this is from the Pasadena Complete Streets Coalition. Injuries and fatalities in California are on the rise for all road users due to traffic crashes, but especially among pedestrians and bicyclists. Speed is often cited as a major reason for serious crashes. State Senator Scott Wiener recently proposed speed governors on all motor vehicles sold in California in an effort to reduce speeding. This is one example of something that's on the table right now. And the question is, what would you do to address the increase of fatalities and injuries on our California roads?
Well, I'm so thankful to be on the same page with my other candidates here tonight. I do believe it is a combination of what both Jed and Flunta have spoken about, and so I won't repeat what they've said, but I do agree with them to a certain extent. But again, I go back to analyzing how this happens. And I've never been afraid of having the hard conversations, and that's not going to be any different tonight. You said it yourself. There's a lot of drivers out there who don't know what they're doing. And literally, they don't know what they're doing because they're illegal immigrants who don't understand our system. And they are a large part of our community. And so we need to ensure that these individuals go through the same process. This is what happens when we have a large number of illegal immigrants coming into our communities and we don't have the infrastructure to handle that. So they're driving without licenses. We have a lot of individuals with addictions. And so what we need to look at is how do we really fix this problem? You don't have to like me, but I'm going to love you enough to speak the truth. Because what happens is when we don't look at the full picture, we end up with these problems. With a community where we have the highest numbers ever of fatal collisions, crime. And this doesn't mean we don't love those people. This doesn't mean that we don't care about our communities. It means that we have to really take a hard look at the policies that we're creating and how it affects our community. Because it's not one or the other. My grandmother taught me this. She's from Peru. She was a God-fearing woman. And she says, a promise from the lips out doesn't mean a thing. So I really hope that you guys will receive it with the heart that it's given, because I do believe we need to be asking ourselves the hard questions.
So we're going to open it up for just a few questions, and I'm going to only give our candidates 1 minute to respond to these questions. Yes, 1 minute, and I'm going to be very strict with this 1 minute now. Right, and then also just to give Board Trustee Steve Gibson is here from Pasadena City College. And thank you to Pasadena City College for allowing us to have this space here today. Also, Patrice Marshall McKenzie, who is Pasadena Unified School District. And then also, if I have any other elected officials that I do not know, or commissioners, if you're a commissioner, raise your hand. No, you don't want to, okay. We have commissioners in here as well. And then, sir.
Hi, my name is John Kitzenay. I'm the president of the Rosario School Board.
Thank you. All right, I know everybody wants to ask questions, but we only have time for a few. Yes, ma'am. And also, sorry, not to cut you off, but please direct your questions to all candidates, and please be respectful to all candidates, all right? Yes, come on.
Right here. I want to first start out by saying I appreciate the compassion you have for people that are undocumented immigrants, right? However, when you said that they're the ones that suffer the most, what we're seeing, footage from New York and Chicago, in these cities, that doesn't seem to be the case. Seems like the people that are being overlooked are the blacks in those communities. They seem to be the forgotten ones. You even have a school that they...
I don't want to cut you off, but can you get to the question?
Yeah, so the question is, how do we bring fairness to the people that are here and not overlook them? Like the children that now have to do school at home again so that their schools can house people that are here that are undocumented.
Thank you. At the end of the day, we have to weigh all things. It's just not one thing. When we talk about how we're going to get there, right, we have to look at everything. We have to ask ourselves, what got us to this point? And so for myself, I don't just want to throw bureaucracy at it. I can't say it enough. We need to really ask ourselves, every program that we throw into the mix, how is it helping? And at the end of the day, when we go back and look at policies, I'm going to remind you again. And I'm really going to ask you to put all your differences aside and ask yourself, we have since 1972 the majority in the Senate. Since 1996 or 97, now I've forgotten, the majority in the Assembly. Since 2011, we've also had the gubernatorial house. And how has this helped us?
You can come up, yeah.
Thank you. That's incorrect. January, I work for Kaiser. January 2024, bill was passed that all undocumented, it's up to 49, can get across the board health care, which actually includes transgender as well. So my question on that, y'all did not address education. I'd like to hear who gets the education, who benefits, because right now a lot of kids are challenged. And also with the healthcare, how do you feel about that, and what are the restrictions that you all may put on that now that we have a law that has come into place that we're going to fund everybody, with Californians struggling? I'm a single Latina woman, it's very hard when I see my check, and now I'm going to be giving multitudes. So how do y'all expect to tackle that?
Right. I do believe that everyone should have access to health care. However, I do believe that everything has a cost to it. And so we need to be asking ourselves if we are funding this, right, which in California and most of the United States we do that. Are we growing the problem, or are we making it better, right? Because everything is interconnected. Nothing is a standalone. We don't live life that way. We don't have just one thing that impacted our lives. It's many experiences, one after another one, that forms us, develops us. So when we look at how do we reform immigration, how do we give health care to everyone, it's not just, here you go, here, and it's fixed. Because what we're doing is perpetuating the problem. I can't say it enough. For the last 20 years, we've had policies from the Democrat Party implementing everything they want. They've got carte blanche. So how is it for you in California?
Thank you guys once again for coming. We really appreciate you guys, and thank you to all of our partner organizations. Before you leave, yes, thank you. And thank you to Radio Honolera, who has graciously gave us this audio equipment and the recording tonight. What I'm going to do is we're going to take last statements, and we're going to give 3-minute last statements to all of the candidates. So you guys can say whatever you didn't get the chance to say in the 2-minute or the 1 minute. There you go, but we're going to give each candidate 3 minutes to speak, and these are last statements. And so, thank you.
Thank you to POPs and all the organizations that invited us tonight, and I thank my fellow candidates as well for their opinions this evening. And I'm going to say this. From the time I graduated from high school, I went to work. I was tenacious. I didn't know what I was going to do. I had a cousin who had just finished some work program where she learned how to do bookkeeping and got a job, and she went, hey, come work with me. And I went, okay, I can do that. And the reason for that was because I came from a very traditional, conservative family who was like, you can't go to college and leave the house unmarried? So I've overcome quite a bit. But I was tenacious, and I found a way for myself. And I understand what you're talking about. I know what it is to sit in the boardroom and be the woman that's overlooked every single time. But I'm not looking in the rearview mirror, because every time that happened, there was that one spark of hope where somebody went, well, what did you say again? And I took it. I took it and I ran with it. And I made an amazing career for myself, and in 2017, I got to take an early retirement. And I do this because I truly want to save our community and the American spirit for the next generation. You can do anything your heart desires, not because I say so, but because I am made in the image of God. And he told me anything is possible. With God on my side, I can move mountains. And we've forgotten to say that to this generation. This generation is broken and confused, and they're feeling it. They're feeling it. My family is a perfect story of the Americans' story today. Not what my parents came for, not that American dream, but the story. My parents were able to buy 2 homes in Pasadena. By hard work, my husband and I, of 20 years, we were able to buy 3 homes in Pasadena. We worked really hard. We saved our money, everything, and we were able to do that. My brother, God bless him, has a beautiful home, but he had to travel 40 miles outside of Pasadena and bought a home in Fontana, because that's the only place where it was reasonable. And my little sister, who has the most accolades, she's a PhD, she's a licensed behavioral scientist, and she had to build a casita on my parents' property in Pasadena because she wanted to stay here. And that's what's wrong with California right now, that you can do everything right, and it's still too hard. So I'm going to leave you with this one question. How did we get here? You know, it's hard to ask the tough questions, but how did we get here? And after you evaluate that, I would ask that you be honest with yourself and make the right choices. God bless you.